Well, if
Linwood,
yeah, please.
what are your thoughts?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your flexibility in moving your meeting to accommodate my schedule and finding being stationary. I think part of the challenge is that it's not necessarily a resource availability. Now, the resources that are available obviously can't serve everybody. Resources that are available are also not being exhausted by the community. The people who, or the spaces, I wouldn't say the people, the spaces of our community where a lot of the troubles lie are not necessarily accessing the resources, right? So you can have a great program, you have a multi-layered, multi-organizational event. 50 people may come out, maybe 70 at best, but you haven't necessarily attacked the heart of the root of what's happening and why things are happening. Not to say we can't do these other avenues, but like there's resources out there from Department of Social Services. You have Boys and Girls Club. You have the YMCA. You have the school system and some of their programming they have internal. Particularly if you're looking at youth violence, you have nonprofits that are doing the work in various spaces beyond just year-round programming, like Mako doing the summer programming. But you have what I talked to you earlier, Tyron, about it. We have a place we have a community that is violent. And I think our challenge is that we're measuring violence, I would almost say reactively. Definitely in prayer with a family of those, family lost a person in in Warsaw, and everything that happened in Northumberland County. But we also have a rate of suicide that nobody's talking about that is as violent as terms of death as homicide, and also non-fatal shootings. We're not talking about that side of the conversation either. Like that's the trauma also, where rather than pulling a gun on somebody else, you may pull a gun on yourself or take pills to kill yourself. And the number of suicides and suicide attempts way outnumber the number of homicides we saw just over the past week in just shootings. So I think part of it is it goes back to mental health conversations. How do people navigate trauma? We're in a society where domestic abuse, rapes, all those spaces are very prevalent in the northern neck, particularly Northumberland County. It's very silent. Nobody wants to talk about it, but they're right there in our community. So my argument I'm making, I just feel is my heart is that it's not that violence has increased, is that the visibility and acceptability of violence has increased. And that you have to add social media to it, right? Imagine the shooting that happened in Reedville and Brown Store. If it happened 20 years ago, you'd hear about it through the rumor mill. You hear about it through phone calls, right? You wouldn't have heard about it as fast as we heard about it. It was on the sheriff's social media page. Everybody knew. It was confirmed. It was moving forward very quickly. And I think it's just the visibility of it. I think the problem is we have a violent society that we watch violence. I was telling Tyron about, y'all remember a couple of weeks back in Montgomery, Alabama, the people with the on the boat got busted upside the head with the chair. Remember that video? Like, It's hilarious, right? But it's still the same violence that propagates gunfire. So on one hand, we laugh at Montgomery, but we, on the other hand, are lamenting Reedville. It is in its own self a contradiction. Violence is violence. And I think for us, we have to now help people understand how to navigate violence, de-escalation. We're back to de-escalation training like we did with the sheriff's office. We had that conversation with the sheriff's office at the front of this organization forming. One of the biggest things we talked about was de-escalation. I mean, I witnessed an officer go after a young man and almost tear his life apart because of just being outraged. It's the same thing. I think we have to get to a point of de-escalating. And that may just be an overall conversation. And de-escalating violence in collaboration with the sheriff's office, because we also don't want to create a space where people who are in more violent prone areas, I won't say violent areas, violent prone areas statistically, are targeted, like we witnessed in Lancaster County and on the Mary Point area, even though everybody's pointing to the Point boys. I know Tyron remembers that from 2020,
Yeah, it was about 3 years ago.
about
I'm
2020.
not aware of that case, but anyway.
Mary Point was being targeted for by the shared by the Commonwealth Attorney's Office to have those who are from the Mary Point area whose charges were who weren't null prosecutions, to bring null prosecutions back up for the reindictment and reprosecution. So, which a null prosecution means that they decided not to pursue the charges, but the charges are there to be pursued if the Commonwealth Attorney decides to pursue them up to the point of the statute of limitations. And there were some charges that they had, and they wanted to bring charges back up to make sure they stayed in jail for another 5-10 years. And we fought back with that, and that caused a lot of drama with NAACP, which I go into that conversation. Judge Towers shaking his head, but it caused a lot of mess. Anyway, but that's the challenge: is how do we begin to de-escalate community violence and not make communities become targets of the sheriff's office at the same time? Like, because to de-escalate violence and then put people in the bullseye of the sheriff's office is not solving our problems. We watched as the organization called Yes, who Kia Gaines started. She had a list of young men. Tony Spencer, the common fraternity, I'll say his name, but says he was on the board of directors, and he ended up using that list as part of the targeting. Like we can't have that happen. So we have to have a way where we're de-escalating the violence in our community, creating positive spaces, and not being targeted by the sheriff's office. That's the challenge I think we're facing as the community. And the violence is here. Like I want everybody. I mean, not that I'm numb to the violence, but we have had people, a lot of people who either have or try to commit suicide in Northumberland County alone, just in 2023. And it's a silent killer because nobody talks about it. It's taboo. And I want to make sure that we're navigating the mental health crisis that's present also. That's why I was. I don't know if it was this. I think it was in this call. Maybe it was interracial conversations. I was suggesting the idea of EYPC was sponsoring a program this past weekend on Stop the Violence, scheduled weeks ago. But they had to postpone it for two reasons. Three. One, the police department in Kilmarnock, it was only at the Kilmarnock Town Center. They would not provide. They said the organization needed to have security, and there were some questions whether Kilmarnock police was actually going to provide the security. It's like they weren't going to provide the security. Two, there were threats made against the event, and three, people were scared to come up because of the issues of violence. Like, be mindful that we've seen stories, and people watch TV. You've seen funerals where there's a homicide victim being funeralized, and people come up and start shooting the place up. Like, there is those people have those, I wouldn't say romanticized fears, but they are realized fears that people have seen before. And I think for us, we should also try to work with that organization potentially and seeing what they're doing. They're trying to regroup to do the event again, stop the violence. I don't know what y'all feel about that. That's even brought forward. But I think we have some bigger issues, I think, we're navigating. And I think it really transcends class and race in this conversation.
Yeah.
This is an issue of trauma, navigating trauma and violence, because we watched a shooting happen in Reedville, shooting happen in Warsaw, shooting happen in Brown Store, and also somebody run over by a car in Reedville. And I equate all four with violence. I don't just differentiate one or the other because of gang violence or beef. It's just how do you navigate what you're going through, which is a mental health crisis at the end of the day. That's what we pinned it on. But I want us to not get into the cliches of mental health and just put on one lump sum of just mental health. Like, it is mental health, but there's some deeper issues and what people are witnessed and what they're witnessing. And also, I go back to Alvadicia post about Kids First. Kids First has been trying to get in Northumberland County Public Schools for about almost 10 years. They haven't got Northumberland County Public Schools. The school board votes them down every time they come forward. So they decided to skip us, go to Lancaster.
And Middlesex.
Excellent success. Came back to us again. We kept saying no. Went to Middlesex, has excellent success. Not happening. Head Start is mobilized. Mile High Kids runs the Head Start for our region. Their Head Start program is based at the Graham Center for Northumberland, Lancaster, and they have a Head Start program in Richmond County. Whoever was running it out of the Denver office is no longer running it, and they were here in Northumberland County at First Baptist several years ago, and they were getting ready to move to Macedonia, but they decided to scrap Northumberland County and put everything in Richmond County. And then that company that ran a Head Start folded, and now Mile High Kids runs it. Mile High Kids is a company out of Newport News that runs basically Northern Next Head Start. But I'm all about early pre-K education. We can find ways to provide and think about it. But the problem with the Kids First, it's a 4-year grant that goes down over 4 years. But the problem is that what it requires to run the program does have to be run through a school, because it requires a nurse and some other facilities and infrastructure things that only the school provides in terms of institutional. This is the thing.
Linwood, what was the reason that Northumberland County did not want to bring Kids First in?
Fiscal and space. The cost the first year they cover most of it. They cover pretty much everything for you. 75, 100,000, 200,000, something like that. They have all the money your first year. Over 4 years, the price goes down, and the school has to absorb the cost of the program. So what Northumberland did, instead with the work from Empower, was we pushed, because they weren't taking the Head Start program, we pushed them to institutionalize a full-day pre-K at 4 years old. That's how we found a middle ground to get it, because Kids First covers 3-year-olds, 3, maybe 4 years old.
3 and 4.
Was there anyone on the school board who was supportive of the program?
Yeah, I mean, maybe Gail Starrett, but she's coming off to run for board of supervisors, possibly. So we'll see if she comes on the board. And definitely
Denise?
She'll support, but that's only 2 votes, and Starrett is getting ready to she's kind of in an in-between space on it. We still have the same vote, essentially. District 5 and District 3. As you had in this conversation. So I don't think they're going to support it now. And you also have a space issue of where you're going to put them, because the school doesn't have any more space. That was the second thing, was the space side of it. But I'm all about trying to find ways to put 3-year-olds into pre-K early in advance. The other challenge for that program, the justification, is going to be pushed back because of the program at Zion. Nope, Zion's program is no longer in Northumberland. They moved to Montrose, so that's not an issue.
Oh, is that right? I was going to ask about that. So are they not connected with are they not connected with the Christ? Well, it was a church. I can't think of the name. Church, the Episcopal Church. Now they're
Light of Christ.
You're kind of breaking up. So
sorry, Light of Christ.
Yeah, Light of Christ. They were connected. They were joined to do that, right? So are they not joined anymore?
I don't know the ins and outs of it. I know they've been looking for space to expand their program, because they had a feeder program, essentially. They'll eventually make a full private school in the next 10 years with all the grades available. But I don't know if they're still connected with Light of Christ. I did hear they were moving to Montrose. I don't know. I haven't driven by it in the daytime to see if the school is open, but they're supposed to move to Montrose in the A.T. Johnson area, somewhere in that complex. They were buying something out there, from what I was hearing.
Okay.
But
so, I'm fully supportive of Kids First as well as Head Start, but then going back to the violence issues, what kinds of approaches would you all think is feasible to at least begin the conversation and potentially develop a community-wide effort to address the issues, whether it be some kind of a forum where it's information, and but at the same time still try to reach those who are not engaged in programs that address violence in some form to curtail it, such as what you mentioned to me that is available in the schools or at Boys and Girls Club or the Y. What other entities are there out there that we could potentially reach out to?
Well, I mean, we have obviously the various institutions. I mean, you obviously have community partners that you can bring to the table to hear what are they doing to think about what I would really frame as a term alternative to violence. There's a larger program that's done by the Quaker Church. I don't know if they still do it, called Alternative Violence Project, AVP. National program, been around for years ago. And I took it, and they do it inside of prisons. It's an Alternative Violence Project. And what they do, I took it at the Jessup Correctional Facility. So I went to Jessup and sat inside the facility with the like maybe 20 people who were inmates. Look at how was I? Because I
No,
was
because
Jessup.
I did some work at Jessup as well at the female population. I would go there every month. So I'm just like, what are you doing up Jessup?
Right.
Is this similar to like a scared straight type thing?
No, it's not. It's I did it. It's done by Quaker Church, and I did it, and I did it as a seminarian. And it's conversations. It's an alternative violence project. It's a full project, full curriculum laid out by the Quaker Church, and it's designed for communities who are people. Everybody in there, a lot of people who were in there were violent offenders, and then was teaching them how to rethink how they deal with violence. And obviously, the Quaker philosophy was applied to it. It is a method to think about. It is one program we could think about implementing, as to how, and you can bring it to the Northern Neck. It's out there. I haven't looked at it in a while. It was a 1-day session, and they go through a nice 8-hour training, and you talk about different ways to do it. It talks about alternative violence. Rather than doing violence, what else can you do to basically channel what you're feeling? I mean, that's what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Tom, you've been quiet, and so is Tony.
Just trying to absorb all of this information and stuff like that. I mean, just like I said in the last meeting, the boys that I know that's involved or doing shootings, they don't have a positive role model in their life. And so I guess my only suggestion is to start with young Black boys or young boys that don't have a positive role model in their life. I don't know what kind of programs that can be brought up with that, but I'm dealing with something now where this young man's mother passed away, his father's in the hospital. He could be hanging out with he could go back to where he doesn't want to go, or he could be hanging out with, my kids and kind of going to school with them and stuff like that. And now he's talking about that he wants to try golf. And so, I mean, if you get these kids around, good role models and positive figures and stuff like that, I don't see how they can get discouraged and go off course and turn a negative route. Just the kids that I know that are doing the shootings, like I said, I know them, I know their parents, I know their fathers, and I can see the reason why.
There was a program that I was involved in some years ago called Big Brothers.
Right. Yeah.
That was a very similar to what you're talking about, where you had positive role models that connected with kids, especially maybe starting around 9, 10 years old, and going on, moving on up, and provide opportunities for them to see positive aspects of life, holding them accountable for their schoolwork and doing things, volunteering, those positive things in the community, as opposed to affiliating with someone who is prone to violence, or maybe I said to fill that gap that's missing. of that adult. And I think that's part of the issue. And what you're talking about, Tony. And not having the right people filling that gap for them.
Right. Yeah, that's what I think. Yes, sir.
And I hear that we focus mostly on guys, but I hear the women now, the girls are getting just as violent as the boys.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to share. My son had a program called the Gentleman's Program, and he would do it at the elementary schools, and he would meet with I think they were like 7, 8, 9 years old, one day a week, and it was like he would meet on a Thursday, and the teacher said there was such a marked difference in those boys' behavior the next day, and so they moved the program to Mondays to get more benefit.
Begin another week.
But
is this on the gentleman? Is this at one school or is this at Northumberland?
Oh no, this was in Maryland. My son up in Maryland. I'm sorry.
Tony, wasn't there a program in Northumberland that had the fathers involved a couple years back? Dogs or something like that. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I know Amari was trying to set up something with the middle school called a gentleman's club, where they teach like, mannerisms and how to dress, like khakis and just kind of I guess be a gentleman, show kids how to be a gentleman and stuff like that. But no, I'm not. That's the only program that I know. But I think we do need programs like that.
But so his program was very similar. It was soft skills. I mean, it's just teaching them how to dress, how to behave. But I think more than anything, it was giving them the attention that they didn't normally get, setting some role models for them. They had very they had rules that they had to follow, like in the sessions, and even outside of that, like the other kids would say to the boys who were in there, "Hey, you can't do that because that's not right," or whatever. So I mean, it wasn't anything. It was very light in terms of the skills they provide them, how to tie a tie, how to do stuff like that. But I think it was the impact of interfacing with those young boys who a lot of times didn't have someone in their household. And I got my meeting people showing up now. So it's recorded.
Thank you.
Send me a link. Send me the link. Okay, bye everybody.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Tom, what are you thinking?
Well, there was we had the Second Chance Ministries going on for several years as well here in the area. I don't know if that program is still functioning or not. Anybody know?
Yes, it's operating under the Northern Baptist Association. I think Ulysses Turner, currently the president, or Gennaro Reed, because Madison Boyd passed away, as you know, several years ago.
Right.
There are county liaisons, but their work is once you get to the court.
Yeah.
So we're trying to bring it back before we get to the court, so that we're not pleading on the church for mercy. But they're still present, and they're still active, and they're still engaged, and they still have the ear of the chief judge of the 15th Circuit is Mike McKinney. So they still have his ear. So that's still a program. I think what Tony's suggesting is this preventive side. I think we need to think about how does that look with more the role models. But again, a role model, I'll go back to my initial argument is, I think the program was called Watchdog or something in Northumberland County.
Yeah, I remember that.
With all of that, people still have to want to embrace the program, right? Like, people go by this program is whack, it's this, they have all reasons why they're not going to touch the program. Well, that's for these kids or for those kids. I'm never thinking it's for every kid, and particularly your kid. How do we? Tony, here's my question for you, because you know the people out there, right? You know what drives or motivates them. What would cause them to want to be part of a program before we get to court, like way before court?
What, you talking about, the younger kids?
Or the parents, right? Because the parents have to green light the program for us to do anything. Whatever we do, parents have to have kids not gonna just get in the car, but hey y'all, I'm gonna grab 5 of my friends. We're gonna go to this program down at the Graham Center. I think it's interesting. That's not how we operate. That's not how kids operate. What's going
Right.
to drive the parents to be involved with programming? And part of my question also is, then he'd be at this table with this conversation too with us. Like, how do we get people to be actually want to be engaged with the programming? Because we can program all day, but people don't show up.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have some parents that will, and you're gonna have some parents that won't. Um, that's a great question. I mean, it really all depends on the parent. I mean, so I don't know how to get them engaged unless you start talking to, well, women first and foremost. I think they care about their kids' well being and stuff like that. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. That's a great question that I'm gonna have to think about. I mean, because for me, I want to be a part, but I know some parents, they don't care about being a part, and so if they don't care about being a part, then they're not gonna care if their kids are a part. And so,
Just like church.
yeah, I mean,
Just like
yeah,
church, if the parents are not going to be involved in church, they're not going to encourage their kids to.
no. So, that's a great question, and I'm gonna have to figure it out.
I think part of the question is like, how do we get it beyond just like my kids and my parents and the friends and my friends' kids, but like the community side of it. Like nobody seems to feel the urgency until your house or your kid gets shot at. Then it becomes, now we got a crisis. Everybody wants to pull away from the problem to not get their hands into it. I mean, we're talking about, I don't want to use the word gangs. We're just talking about retaliation, because retaliation has been the word recently, or even last year, really, with the Northumberland Lancaster retaliatory shooting. Nobody wants to be retaliated upon or be shot at. So I'm trying to think about how do we engage people to come out, because you can't just wait till your kid is shot at and now you're at the front with the microphone talking about, I'm not an expert. Like, we are all the experts in changing our community. I think we just don't feel the power because we feel the community is so large, essentially, and we're such a small voice.
Let me ask a question. If we could identify youth offenders that have had some connection or interaction with law enforcement in a negative way, and identify who some of those kids are, and then reach out to their parents, make some connection with them about ways that could help curtail future actions, or what are some of their needs? How could we as a community help them? Would some type of an approach like that? Because otherwise we're not going to be able to identify individuals, because we're not all Tony Stark. Tony has an ear to the community. He knows a lot of the stuff that's going on and who's doing what. Um, but at the same time, our law enforcement, um, they have information and connections to individuals who have a history of doing things. And maybe through them and through collaboration with social services, maybe to identify those hardship cases where there are struggles going on within the family unit that could use some kind of positive um, uh, influence, or reaching out to be a listening ear, if nothing else, to at least begin a conversation. Does that have merit in your minds?
Um, I guess
You
yes
on
and
you, okay.
no. Uh, I mean, because then it's like you're kind of tipping them off on maybe they know something about what I'm doing or whatever the case is, and so that could slow down the activity. Law enforcement going to them?
No, not law enforcement going to them. Us going to them.
Okay, you're talking about
Having
us
a
going.
yeah, whether it's clergy or other community leaders, just opening the door for a conversation.
I got you. Yeah, I mean,
He's
yeah.
suggesting someone with street cred showing up. That's what he's saying. It's just it's street credibility coming to the conversation. That's what he's
Yeah,
suggesting. How does that play out? What do you think?
I
Does street
mean,
cred carry weight anymore?
yeah, it definitely does. Yeah, I mean, of course. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it
Right.
always.
It carries weight, but right. I'm just thinking about like some of the young boys, because part of the current generation, it's not like it was in the 90s. The respect for the older is not as it is there, but it's not like it used to be because the system is decentralized. There's no leader of any sort of we're on clicks. We have clicks these days. We're in clicks compared to gangs. Very small, very block oriented from rural, urban, and suburban. So it's not like region wide gang like Gangster Disciples, Black Disciples type mindset. Bloods and Crips, some Bloods and Crips still, but it's not like that how it used to be. So I'm just trying to figure out. I think what he's saying is if we brought someone who has a history but has changed, would that be helpful in the
yes.
conversation?
Yeah, I think it would if you get the right person.
You have any ideas of who that
I mean, the
right
question
person might be?
I don't know.
or is it
I
about
mean, I got a,
celebrity status?
yeah, I mean,
What's
I
that,
got a couple
Linwood?
friends.
I was
What's
saying
that,
like
Tony?
celebrity status. Go ahead, Tony.
No, all right, so these guys that these young guys, I mean, I know them personally because I mean, I have kids around the same age as them. Um, I mean, and so I kind of watched them grow up, you know what I mean? And so, I mean, I've had a couple conversations with a couple of the boys, you know what I mean? Now this was a long time ago now. Now this was when he was first in trouble. I think he was doing some community service at the YMCA. And you know, so I mean, I see the other one playing basketball at the YMCA every Sunday or something like that. So I mean, I think I could reach out to him. I think I could talk to him. There's a couple other guys around the community that I think I can reach out to that has quote unquote street cred and try to get some stuff calmed down. But I mean, of course, I have to talk to him and try to get them involved as much as possible as well. Because just like you said, it's a community thing. I mean, can't nobody just do it by itself. Um, and so yeah. I mean that's how I feel.
Someone who has gone through what they are going through now and has come out on the other side in a very positive way that could talk to those same experiences and
Right.
the road that they're heading down and the reasons behind it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, yeah. But I don't know about a couple of these guys. I mean, some guys are hard to get to. And some guys, it don't matter as much as you tell them, the road they're going down and stuff like that, they're gonna still do whatever they want to do. I mean,
But you
so
know something?
my thing is what is I guess another thing of mine is what is law enforcement really doing? Because there's been a whole lot of shootings and it hasn't been anything really discovered, really nobody's been locked up, nobody's been charged. And so I guess what is that about? And it's for me, it's black shootings, right? I mean, it's black people's houses getting shot up, it's black kids getting shot, and it doesn't seem like anything is getting solved. I got a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
With problem with that. And it's the same. Now I'm not trying to put it out there anything like that. From my understanding, it's the same detective, and I think it's Michael Parker. And I know personally from a from a girl's house that got shot up. I was in close communication with her. And it's like, we're trying, we're sorry, we're trying to do our best, but it's nothing at the end of the day. I know how hard, drive-by shootings are, to solve or whatever the case is, but either Northumberland don't have the right resources, or do they not care? Because it just don't seem like anything's getting solved around here.
Well, that would be part of my conversation in my next meeting with Sheriff Beecham. That's
Gotcha.
one of the things that I want to talk with him about. Because if it appears as though the sheriff's office is not addressing the needs, the crimes that are being committed, and I understand that there are probably things happening below the surface that we're not aware of. I understand that, but at least from there should be some evidence that something is happening.
Right.
And I know they're limited on what they can share, even with us. But at the same time, where is the level of investment that they have to the community in ensuring that the violence, the crimes that are being committed, that not only are they're more than just being looked into, but thoroughly investigated and being brought to an end. That's what the community needs to have, some level of confidence that these things are happening. And I think that is one of the purposes of the Community Liaison and Advocacy Council.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Now
to
the other
find
argument,
out,
now the other argument is, as the community is willing to share information with law enforcement must be committed to share information with law enforcement.
Yes,
which is
yes,
the blue shield. And
yes.
that's where I think people have not seen. And I don't fully believe on the national stage we are there yet. I think it's actually, I think they're raising the shield up right now, in my estimation, based on what I've seen with different things happening. I mean, not necessarily in Northumberland, but in Gloucester County, they literally watched as people paraded around the school with AR-15s, and nobody got arrested, like, because of sanctuary status. Like, the 2A sanctuary status is still applicable in Northumberland County. So it's still like, it's turning their heads on some, but not on everybody. And I mean, the other side of it, they're not targeting us. They're not putting pressure on us to tell what's happening. So, and people don't want to be the snitch, because if somebody shot up somebody's house, the last thing you want to go do is snitch on that person. I mean, if they shot that person up, what are they going to do to you? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the challenge. That's a real question. I think that's where the investigations, I would imagine, fall short. Tony, is that what's happening? People just aren't necessarily telling all the news they know, right?
You're on mute, Tony.
Yeah, I would say that. I would say that people's not coming forward. But sometimes, I mean, people do come forward, and from my understanding, they say, we're gonna look into it and stuff like that. And I mean, it never gets done. So a lot of stuff on social media, Instagram, I'm pretty sure. I mean, because that's where a lot of the stuff is, like, a lot of stuff is being said. That kind of nobody knows in the community, and this guy's kind of saying it, and it's like, I don't know. I think they know who it is, but I don't think they're doing anything about it. Now that's where that's just what I think. And why they're not doing anything about it, I don't know. Maybe because they can't prove it, they can't solve it. But I don't know.
There's a lot that's out there, and it's going to take some time for us to get footing and get it in our minds as to what the needs are or how to approach it. I think what has been shared today has been very valuable. I've got a couple of pages of notes myself from the conversations. Tony, you are more in tune to what's happening in the streets, primarily because, I mean, with the age of your kids, you're out there in the community, you're listening, and people share information with you because you are a trusted figure. And you're going to be a very valuable commodity when it comes to pulling this thing together. You understand what some of the challenges are of parenting kids in this age group, and even some of the things that they're having to deal with, but also connecting with parents who have challenges raising their own children, and especially with resources that may not be there, but also the lack of a both parents, or maybe because one of the parents is into stuff themselves, which makes it impossible to correct the behavior of their children is doing wrong, if that makes sense. So it's a lot to try to understand. And Tom, you have this thinker look on your face.
I was born that way. I think, I think I think right now, Tyron, this conversation tells me we are moving now into the more mature stage of the CLAC relationship to the sheriff's department. I think we're presenting now a real issue that truly can be addressed. It can be, and that Johnny's got to start thinking more expansively about how the sheriff's department can be more flexible and accountable, and how they can be a player in prevention, not in responding to that which has happened, but in intervening so that which has happened doesn't have to. I think we're at a point now where this is the urgency of the conversation is now more than just we want to have a liaison group.
Yeah,
we have something to really present now. And the advantage, of course, is that it's well, it's not an advantage. It just is. It's happening. Yeah.
I am going to set up another meeting with him. Which I'm out of town next week. I'll try to set something up where maybe the four of us, or if the other those that are in this group, can meet with him as well to address these kinds of concerns, and make him aware of what the community needs in the way of developing a level of confidence in the sheriff's office to deal with those issues, not sharing what they can't share, but at least knowing let the community know that something is being done. Okay. There has to be some level of transparency. And we also want to take a look at some of those other things that we talked about, dealing with the suicidal rates, the shootings, domestic violence, the rapes, those sorts of things that are happening in the community that should also be addressed to some degree, whether it's resources that are available, because I think those kinds of things we can have a forum of individuals to provide information to guide them when those kinds of concerns are there. But also the violence is a totally separate issue. Developing programs maybe for the 7-year-olds and above, for whether it's Big Brothers or the Gentleman's Club or something that provides some level of positive structure to help the kids start navigating life in a positive way before they get to the point where they are introduced to, well, not introduced to, but they will embrace those entities that are engaged in unscrupulous behaviors or violence, potentially leading to violence. I think we're off to a good start. I think the conversation that we've had today is very meaningful. And I'm excited about possibilities now. I wanted to hear and needed to hear from all of you, which we did. There's value in what has been shared today. And Tony, when I said that you are going to be an invaluable part of this process, I really mean it. Because of your status within the community, where you sit, but also the things that you are exposed to and the level of trust that people have for you in the community. So I do appreciate everything that was shared today. Anything before? Huh?
I said, it's no problem at all.
And was there anything else you wanted to share, either Tom or Linwood?
I think
No, just looking forward to seeing what the next steps are.
Well, I think the next step, I want us to think about what was said today. Okay. I also want to set up a meeting with Sheriff Beecham.
Yeah.
And probably the major to address the last piece that we were talking about with the sharing of information, with being flexible and accountable to the community. And even some thoughts that he might have or they might have with regards to reaching those offenders, those young offenders right now, that might help turn them around to some degree, and what types of programs that law enforcement is aware of that may have been successful in other communities. I think Mary Palmer, I think she has insight to a bit of information as well because of some of her experiences, as well as Gloria in the Hispanic community. So, I mean, all of them, I think, hopefully they'll be able to be on the next call that we have. But I think this gives us a starting point. So, what I will do is I will draft an email just to kind of highlight the things that we've talked about in our conversations today, and share with everyone, and then solicit any additional thoughts that they might have, especially those who were not able to be with us. And is there a way you can send them the recording, Tom?
Well, yeah, I can send everybody the link.
Okay. If you would do that, send that to everyone. That way they can listen to the conversation. And there may not be a need to send an email out, but I think just to document what we talked about in some kind of a note form, I'll work on that. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds good.
Hey, thank y'all so much for your participation today. And I am looking forward to even more now bit more excited about this venture. I am, it's much needed. It's much needed.
It feels real, Tyron. What we're talking about feels real to me. I think it's got some traction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Listen, thank y'all again. And Linwood, you be safe on the road. I know you got your kids in the back. All right. Y'all take care of yourselves now. Thank y'all so much.
All right, bye.
Okay, bye.